Now, if you watch my last video, and if this is the first time you've seen me wearing this outfit, I recommend that you go to the previous video that I just uploaded. I'm wearing the same outfit. Watch that video first. I'm talking about a lot of important issues about social mobility and how the left, the far left specifically, is really the group of people that's behind the lack of social mobility in America, and how they're twisted numbers and hiding their own iniquities, blaming their screw-ups on people that didn't have nothing to do with it, blaming their own mistakes on other people. That's passing the buck, and that's what far left love to do, is pass the buck. Now, I'm going to read a speech right now by my favorite president, Theodore Roosevelt, who most definitely earned his face on the side of Mount Rushmore, most definitely. This is a very obscure speech. Very few people know this speech even exists. There are no recordings of this speech. There's no film of it. You're only going to find a written copy of this speech at the Roosevelt Library and Museum. You're also going to find a copy of it at the National Archives. It was published in a book in 1907 called The Meaning of Modern Life. And I happened to find a copy of that book at a used bookstore that was going out of business. Thanks, Amazon. This is an original 1907 copy. That was the only year this book was published. So it was a very limited edition book. This is a relatively rare book. It's not worth very much financially speaking. I mean, it's not like I could get a lot of money if I sold it on eBay, maybe $5 or $10. So it's not worth selling. And the information that's in the book is far more valuable than any kind of monetary gain I might receive from selling this book. Meaning of Modern Life, 1907. There's a link in the description where you can download a free PDF copy of this book from the National Archives, and I highly recommend that you download this book and read it, all of it. Yeah, you can see this is a thick book. This book has a lot to say, and I've read it a few times, and it does have a lot to say. I bought it because I was fascinated by the title, Meaning of Modern Life. Well, what in the hell could people in 1907 have to say about the meaning of modern life? And it turns out they've got a lot to say about the meaning of modern life. And a lot of what they have to say, particularly the speech that I'm about to read right now, absolutely applies to April 2019. Absolutely. In fact, this speech right here is probably the most important thing that could be said in 2019 based on the current political situation that's going on with the divide between the left and the right and all this craziness going on social media, and the left doing their class antagonism. And that's exactly what this is about, is the dangers of class antagonism. And I find it deeply disappointing that somebody at the bottom of the socioeconomic ladder, like me, has to read these words to people who are at the top of the socioeconomic ladder. Y'all should already be aware of this. Y'all should already know this stuff. Y'all should know better. But you're too arrogant and dumb to even give a crap about books that were written over 100 years ago, because y'all are just intentionally ignorant and insisting on your ignorance. So anyway, without further ado, let's go on and listen to President Roosevelt, because he's far more eloquent than I am. There's a few things in this speech that no longer apply to the modern society, because, for instance, we're no longer on a gold standard. There's one paragraph towards the end of the speech where he talks about being on the gold standard. We're not on the gold standard anymore. There's also a few words and phrases in here that are a little arcane, and I'll provide definitions for those terms that you might not understand, because these words haven't been used in a long time. So I'll provide definitions and updates in the screen as a caption. But however, I'm going to read the words exactly as they are written. These are the words of President Theodore Roosevelt from Labor Day 1903, and it's been 116 years since any people have heard these words on a large scale. So let's go on and listen to President Roosevelt. Forgive me for not having a nice formal New York accent. I'm a little bit of a redneck, Roosevelt. At least I have enough respect for these words to put on my best business semi-formal attire, my best semi-formal business attire. It's obviously not an evening suit with a white tie but it's definitely semi-formal attire, and these words are definitely deserving of that level of personal respect. So let's listen to what President Roosevelt has to say, because he says what I just said earlier a lot better than I do. Governor Higgins, my fellow citizens, in speaking on Labor Day at the annual fair of the New York State Agricultural Association, it's natural to keep especially in mind the two bodies who compose the majority of our people and upon whose welfare depends the welfare of the entire state. Now, if circumstances are such that thrift, energy, industry, and forethought enable the farmer, the tiller of the soil on the one hand, and the wage worker on the other to keep themselves, their wives, and their children in reasonable comfort, then the state is well off, and we can be assured that the other classes in the community will likewise prosper. On the other hand, if there is in the long run a lack of prosperity among the two classes named, then all other prosperity is sure to be more seeming than real. It has been our profound good fortune as a nation that hitherto, disregarding exceptional periods of depression and the normal and inevitable fluctuations, there has been, on the whole, from the beginning of our government to the present day, a progressive betterment alike in the condition of the tiller of the soil and in the condition of the man who, by his manual skill and labor, supports himself and his family, and endeavors to bring up his children so that they may be at least as well off as, if not better, than he himself has been. There are, of course, exceptions, but as a whole, the standard of living among the farmers of our country has risen from generation to generation, and the wealth represented on the farms has steadily increased, while the wages of labor have likewise risen, both as regards the actual money paid and as regards the purchasing power that money represents. Side by side with this increase in the prosperity of the wage worker and the tiller of the soil has gone on a great increase in prosperity among the businessmen and among certain classes of professional men. And the prosperity of these men has been partly the cause and partly the consequence of the prosperity of farmer and wage worker. Now, it cannot be too often repeated that in this country, in the long run, we, all of us, tend to go up or down together. Now, if the average of well-being is high, it means that the average wage worker and the average farmer and the average businessman are all alike well off. If the average shrinks, there is not one of these classes which does not feel the shrinkage. Of course, there are always some men who are not affected by good times, just as there are some men who are not affected by bad times. But speaking broadly, it is true that if prosperity comes, all of us tend to share more or less therein, and that if adversity comes, each of us, to a greater or less extent, feels the tension. Unfortunately, in this world, the innocent frequently find themselves obliged to pay some of the penalty for the guilty. And so if hard times come, whether they be due to our own fault or to our misfortune, whether they be due to some burst of speculative frenzy that has caused a portion of the business world to lose its head, or this is a loss which no legislation can possibly supply, or whether they be due to any lack of wisdom in a portion of the world of labor. In each case, the trouble once started is felt more or less in every walk of life. It is all essential to the continuance of our healthy national life that we should recognize this community of interest among our people. The welfare of each of us is dependent fundamentally upon the welfare of all of us, and therefore, in public life, that man is the best representative of each of us who seeks to do good to each by doing good to all. In other words, whose endeavor it is not to represent any special class and promote merely that class's selfish interests, but to represent all true and honest men of all sections and all classes, and to work for their interests by working for our common country. We can keep our government on a sane and healthy basis, and we can make and keep our social system what it should be only on condition of judging each man not as a member of a class, but on his worth as a man. It is An infamous thing in our American life, and fundamentally treacherous to our institutions, to apply to any man any test save that of his personal worth, or to draw between two sets of men any distinction save the distinction of conduct, the distinction that marks off those who do well and wisely from those who do ill and foolishly. There are good citizens and bad citizens in every class, as in every locality. The attitude of decent people towards great public and social questions should be determined not by accidental questions of employment or locality, but by those deep-set principles which represent the innermost souls of men. The failure in public and in private life thus to treat each man on his own merits, the recognition of this government as being either for the poor as such or for the rich as such, would prove fatal to our republic, as such failure and such recognition have always proved fatal in the past to other republics. A healthy republican government must rest upon individuals, not upon classes or sections. As soon as it becomes a government by a class or a section, it departs from the old American ideal. It is, of course, the merest truism to say that free institutions are of avail only to people who possess the high and peculiar characteristics needed to take advantage of such institutions. The century that has just closed has witnessed many and lamentable instances in which people have seized a government free in form or have had it bestowed upon them, and yet have permitted it, under the forms of liberty, to become some species of despotism or anarchy, because they did not have in them the power to make this seeming liberty one of deed instead of one merely of word. Under such circumstances, the seeming liberty may be supplanted by a tyranny or despotism in the first place, or it may reach the road of despotism by the path of license and anarchy. It matters but little which road is taken. In either case, the same goal is reached. People show themselves just as unfit for liberty, whether they submit to anarchy or to tyranny and class government, whether it be the government of a plutocracy or the government of a mob, is equally incompatible with the principles established in the days of Washington and perpetuated in the days of Lincoln. Many qualities are needed by a people which would preserve the power of self-government in fact as well as in name. Among these qualities are forethought, shrewdness, self-restraint, the courage which refuses to abandon one's own rights, and the disinterested and kindly good sense which enables one to do justice to the rights of others. Lack of strength and lack of courage unfit men for self-government on the one hand, and on the other, brutal arrogance, envy. In short, any manifestation of the spirit of selfish disregard, whether of one's own duties or of the rights of others, are equally fatal. In the history of mankind, many republics have risen, have flourished for a less or greater time, and have fallen, because their citizens lost the power of governing themselves and thereby of governing their state. And in no way has this loss of power been so often and so clearly shown as in the tendency to turn the government into a government primarily for the benefit of one class instead of a government for the benefit of the people as a whole. Again and again, and in the republics of ancient Greece, in those of medieval Italy and medieval Flanders, this tendency was shown, and wherever the tendency became a habit, it invariably and inevitably proved fatal to the state. In the final result, it mattered not one whit whether the movement was in favor of one class or another. The outcome was equally fatal, whether the country fell into the hands of a wealthy oligarchy which exploited the poor, or whether it fell under the domination of a turbulent mob which plundered the rich. In both cases, there resulted violent alternations between tyranny and disorder, and a final complete loss of liberty to all citizens, destruction in the end overtaking the class which had for the moment been victorious, as well as that which had momentarily been defeated. The death knell of the Republic had rung as soon as the active power became lodged in the hands of those who sought not to do justice to all citizens, rich and poor alike, but to stand for one special class and for its interests as opposed to the interests of others. The reason why our future is assured lies in the fact that our people are genuinely skilled in and fitted for self-government, and therefore will spurn the leadership of those who seek to excite this ferocious and foolish class antagonism. The average American knows not only that he himself intends to do about what is right, but that his average fellow countryman has the same intention and the same power to make his intention effective. He knows, whether he be a businessman, a professional man, farmer, mechanic, employer, or wage worker, that the welfare of each of these men is bound up with the welfare of all the others, that each is neighbor to the other, is actuated by the same hopes and fears, has fundamentally the same ideals, and that all alike have much the same virtues and the same faults. Our average fellow citizen is a sane and healthy man who believes in decency and has a wholesome mind. He therefore feels an equal scorn alike for the man of wealth guilty of the mean and base spirit of arrogance towards those who are less well off, and for the man of small means who in his turn either feels or seeks to excite in others the feeling of mean and base envy for those who are better off. The two feelings, envy and arrogance, are but opposite sides of the same shield, each but different developments of the same spirit. Fundamentally, the unscrupulous rich man who seeks to exploit and oppress those who are less well off is in spirit not opposed to, but identical with, the unscrupulous poor man who desires to plunder and oppress those who are better off. The courtier and the demagogue are but developments of the same type under different conditions, each manifesting the same servile spirit, the same desire to rise by pandering to base passions. And though one panders to power in the shape of a single man, and the other to power in the shape of a multitude, so likewise the man who wishes to rise by wronging others must by right be contrasted not with the man who likewise wishes to do wrong, though to a different set of people, but with the man who wishes to do justice to all people and to wrong none. The line of cleavage between good and bad citizenship lies not between the man of wealth who acts squarely by his fellows and the man who seeks each day's wage by that day's work, wronging no one and doing his duty by his neighbor, nor yet does this line of cleavage divide the unscrupulous wealthy man who exploits others in his own interest from the demagogue or from the sullen and envious being who wishes to attack all men of property, whether they do well or ill. On the contrary, the line of cleavage between good citizenship and bad citizenship separates the rich man who does well from the rich man who does ill, the poor man of good conduct from the poor man of bad conduct. This line of cleavage lies at right angles to any such arbitrary line of division that is separating one class from another, one locality from another, or men with a certain degree of property from those of a less degree of property. The good citizen is the man who, whatever his wealth or his poverty, strives manfully to do his duty to himself, to his family, to his neighbor, to the state, who is incapable of the baseness which manifests itself either in arrogance or in envy, but who, while demanding justice for himself, is no less scrupulous to do justice to others. It is because the average American citizen, rich or poor, is of just this type that we have cause for our profound faith in the future of the Republic. Ours is a government of liberty, by, through, and under the law. Lawlessness and connivance at law-breaking, whether the law-breaking take the form of a crime of greed and cunning, or a crime of violence, are destructive not only of order, but of the true liberties which can only come through order. If alive to their true interests, Rich and poor alike will set their faces like flint against the spirit which seeks personal advantage by overriding the laws, without regard to whether this spirit shows itself in the form of bodily violence by one set of men, or in the form of vulpine cunning by another set of men. Let the watchwords of all our people be the old familiar watchwords of honesty, decency, fair dealing, and common sense. The qualities denoted by these words are essential to all of us as we deal with the complex industrial problems of today. The problems affecting not merely the accumulation, but even more the wise distribution of wealth. And we ask no man's permission when we require him to obey the law. Neither the permission of the poor man, nor yet of the rich man. Least of all can the man of great wealth afford to break the law, even for his own financial advantage, for the law is his prop and support, and it is both foolish and profoundly unpatriotic for him to fail in giving hearty support to those who show that there is in very fact one law and one law only, alike for the rich and the poor, for the great and the small. Men sincerely interested in the due protection of property, and men sincerely interested in seeing that the just rights of labor are guaranteed, should alike remember that not only that in the long run, neither the capitalist nor the wage worker can be helped in healthy fashion save by helping the other, but also that to require either side to obey the law and to do its full duty towards the community is emphatically to that side's real interest. There is no worse enemy of the wage worker than the man who condones mob violence in any shape or who preaches class hatred. And surely the slightest acquaintance with our industrial history should teach even the most short-sighted that the times of most suffering for our people as a whole, the times when business is stagnant and capital suffers from shrinkage and gets no return from its investments, are exactly the times of hardship and want and grim disaster among the poor. If all the existing instrumentalities of wealth could be abolished, the first and severest suffering would come among those of us who are the least well off at the present. The wage worker is well off only when the general well-being, when the rest of the country is well off, and he can best contribute to this general well-being by showing sanity and a firm purpose to do justice to others. In his turn, the capitalist, who is really a conservative, the man who has forethought as well as patriotism, should heartily welcome every effort, legislative or otherwise, which has for its object to secure fair dealing by capital, corporate or individual, towards the public and towards the employee. Such laws as the franchise tax law in this state, which the Court of Appeals recently unanimously decided constitutional, such a law as that passed in Congress last year for the purpose of establishing a Department of Commerce and Labor, under which there should be a bureau to oversee and secure publicity from the great corporations which do an interstate business. Such a law as that passed at the same time for the regulation of the great highways of commerce, so as to keep these roads clear on fair terms to all producers in getting their goods to market. These laws are in the interest not merely of the people as a whole, but of the propertied classes. For in no way is the stability of property better assured than by making it patent to our people that property bears its proper share of burdens to the state, that property is handled not only in the interest of the owner, but in the interest of the whole community. In other words, legislation to be permanently good for any class must also be good for the nation as a whole. And legislation which does injustice to any class is certain to work harm to the nation. Take our currency system, for example. This nation is on a gold basis. The treasury of the public is in excellent condition. Never before has the per capita of circulation been as large as it is this day. And this circulation, moreover, is of money, every dollar of which is at par with gold. Now, our having this sound currency system is of benefit to banks, of course, but it is of infinitely more benefit to the people as a whole because of the healthy effect on business conditions. Now, in the same way, whatever is advisable in the way of remedial or corrective currency legislation, and nothing revolutionary is advisable under present conditions, must be undertaken only from the standpoint of the business community as a whole, that is, of the American body politic as a whole. Whatever is done, we cannot afford to take any step backward or to cast any doubt upon the certain redemption in standard coin of every circulating note. Among ourselves, we differ in many qualities of body, head, and heart. We are unequally developed, mentally as well as physically. But each of us has the right to ask that he shall be protected from wrongdoing as he does his work and carries his burden through life. No man needs sympathy because he has to work, because he has a burden to carry. Far and away, the best prize that life offers is the chance to work hard at work worth doing. And that this is a prize open to every man, for there can be no work better worth doing than that done to keep in health and comfort and with reasonable advantages those immediately dependent upon the husband, the father, or the son. There is no room in our healthy American life for the mere idler, for the man or woman whose object it is throughout life to shirk the duties which life ought to bring. Life can mean nothing worth meaning unless its prime aim is the doing of duty, the achievement of results worth achieving. A recent writer has finally said, quote, "After all, the saddest thing that can happen to a man is to carry no burdens. To be bent under too great a load is bad. To be crushed by it is lamentable. But even in that, there are possibilities that are glorious. But to carry no load at all, there is nothing in that. No one seems to arrive at any goal really worth reaching in this world who does not come to it heavy laden." Unquote. Surely from our own experience, each one of us knows that this is true. And from the greatest to the smallest, happiness and usefulness are largely found in the same soul. And the joy of life is won in its deepest and truest sense only by those who have not shirked life's burdens. The men whom we most delight to honor in all this land are those who in the iron years from 61 to 65 bore on their shoulders the burden of saving the Union. They did not choose the easy task. They did not shirk the difficult duty. Deliberately and of their own free will, they strove for an ideal upward and onward across the stony slopes of greatness. They did the hardest work that was then to be done. They bore the heaviest burden that any generation of Americans ever had to bear. And because they did this, they have won such proud joy as has befallen to the lot of no other men. Powerful words, President Roosevelt. Let's try that again. They bore the heaviest burden that any generation of Americans ever had to bear, and because they did this, they have won such proud joy as it has fallen to the lot of no other men to win, and have written their names forevermore on the golden honor roll of the nation. As it is with the soldier, so it is with the civilian. To win success in the business world, to become a lawyer, or doctor means that the man has devoted his best energy and power through the long years to the achievement of his ends. So it is in the life of the family, upon which the last analysis, the whole welfare of the nation rests. The man or woman who as breadwinner and homemaker, or as wife and mother, has done all that he or she can do patiently and uncomplainingly is to be honored and is to be envied by all those who have never had the good fortune to feel the need and duty of doing such work. The woman who has borne and who has reared as they should be reared a family of children has in the most emphatic manner deserved well of the Republic. Her burden has been heavy, and she has been able to bear it worthily only by possession of resolution, of good sense, of conscience, and of unselfishness. But if she has borne it well, then to her shall come the supreme blessing, for in the words of the oldest and greatest of books, quote, "Her children shall rise up and call her blessed." And among the benefactors of the land, her place must be with those who have done the best and the hardest work, whether as lawgivers or as soldiers, whether in public or in private life. This is not a soft and easy creed to preach. It is a creed willingly learned only by men and women who, together with the softer virtues, possess also the stronger, who can do and dare and die at need, but who, while life lasts, will never flinch from their allotted task. You farmers and wage workers and businessmen of this great state, of this mighty and wonderful nation, are gathered here together today, proud of your state and still prouder of your nation, because your forefathers and predecessors have lived up just to this creed. You have received from their hands a great inheritance, and you will leave an even greater inheritance to your children and your children's children, provided only that you practice alike in your private and your public lives the strong virtues which have given us as a people greatness in the past. It is not enough to be well-meaning and kindly, but weak. Neither is it enough to be strong unless morality and decency go hand in hand with strength. We must possess the qualities which make us do our duty in our homes and among our neighbors, and in addition, we must possess the qualities which are indispensable to the makeup of every great and masterful nation. The qualities of courage and hardihood, of individual initiative, and yet of power to combine for a common end. Above all, the resolute determination to permit no man and no set of men to sunder us one from the other by lines of caste or creed or section. We must act upon the motto of all for each and each for all. There must be ever present in our minds the fundamental truth that in a republic such as ours, the only safety is to stand neither for or against any man because he is rich or because he is poor, because he is engaged in one occupation or another, because he works with his brains, or because he works with his hands. We must treat each man on his worth and merits as a man. We must see that each is given a square deal, and because he is entitled to no more and should receive no less. Finally, we must keep ever in mind that a republic such as ours can exist only by the virtue of orderly liberty, which comes through the equal domination of the law over all men alike, and through its administration in such resolute and fearless fashion as shall teach that no man is above it and no man below it. Thank you.